Woo! How excited are you to talk about generational differences? Yeah. All right, let me re-ask it. How excited are you to have a beer tonight with a what do you have in prime rib? Or is that true? How many of you are ready for a steak and a beer? Yeah. All right, I should have started with that question. All right, well, hey, I am excited to be back. And let me just say, I have the opportunity to speak at audiences all over the country. And there is some very genuine and authentic energy in here. And you can tell that there's a strong culture and a strong team vibe. And not all teams are created equal. But I appreciate every one of you that reached out on LinkedIn, sent me some messages about Tuesday's presentation. And it's good to see so many people committed, loyal, dedicated to doing great things. And it's so great to be back. And this is actually the toughest slot for a speaker. Afternoon, after lunch, Friday. So I'm going to ask you, just for a favor, if you can bring some energy. Can we commit to that today, to bring some high-level enthusiasm and energy? All right, hey, that's what I like. Or as Jason would say, can we kick some ass this afternoon? All right, fair enough. So does anybody know how many generations are currently alive in our world right now? Any idea? What number of generations are still alive? 7. There's 7 generations. Anybody know what those generations are called? Be friendly. Boomers. So there's boomers. There's Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, the millennials, right? Some of them have multiple names. There's also the greatest generation, still alive, some of them, with their birth years starting in the early 1900s. Some of them are still alive. Let's see, so we got the generational, the greatest generation. We got the traditionalists, also known as the silent generation, born after the Great Depression, and they remain silent, smallest generation. And then we have the boomers, we have Gen X, we have Gen Y, millennials, Gen Z entering the workforce right now. And what's the generation that's being born right now? What are they called? Gen Alpha. 7 generations. What generation is the best? Boomers. Are you a boomer, sir? Yes. Of course. Anybody else? Anybody else? How many feel that the boomers are the best generation that has ever lived? Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Any other thoughts? How about Gen X? Is Gen X the greatest generation? Yes. Yeah. I like that. That's enthusiasm. How about, is anyone in here from Gen Z? Is there any Gen Z here? Is Gen Z the greatest generation? Yeah. That was a definitive. All right. All right, here's the controversial one. Are millennials the greatest generation that have ever lived? All right, so there's really 2 phenomenons happening right now based on generations. The reason we're talking about this so much is there was a millennial phenomenon that happened. I'm going to address that. In fact, I did a TED Talk. My TED Talk was called Millennials Are Not Your Leadership Challenge, for a specific reason. And it was at the height of stereotypical millennial conversations happening. And then the second thing is technology. Technology is causing a major divide between all the generations because technology is magnified every couple of months right now. Things are shifting and enhancing. Whereas 200 years ago, one generation was very similar to the next generation. Right now, they're extremely different. In the way we learn, in the way we teach, in the way we talk, everything is very, very different from one generation to the next. Even somebody who was born at the early phase of their generation could be very different from somebody born later in that phase. So it's happening, it's technology happening. But again, it's the millennial phenomenon. There's some things that happen because of the millennial generation. We're going to address that today. Because this is important, achieving generational excellence. How to unify people. So how many generations are represented at KE? Any thought? How many work here? Okay, let's just take a quick. I know Gen Alpha's not here yet. They're too young. Gen Z? Okay, we got Gen Z. We got, what's that? Millennials? You got millennials here? Okay, Gen X. Boomers. Are there any traditionalists here? 5. Okay, so 4. Quick question for you. The KE way, Which generation should exemplify it? All of them, right? We're not exempt from it. And here's the problem with generational differences. Most of us can easily identify what's perceived to be wrong with the other generation. Not necessarily our own, because we all belong to the best generation. That's whatever generation we are. But we easily find what's wrong with others. And so this presentation, I launched this presentation about 3 or 4 years ago because people were trying to figure out, how do we unify everybody? Is unification important here? Teamwork, we talked about that. So we're gonna set the stage today. In my family, I have 5 generations. My aunts and my uncles, they're all boomers. I'm a Gen X, greatest generation ever. My 2 sons are millennials. My daughter is Gen Z, and my grandsons are Gen Alpha. And the cycle just continues, right? So that's where we are as a family. You may think about this. You may even find this educational tonight for your family and go, well, no wonder Grandpa acts that way. Now I get it. But we can achieve generational excellence. So what I'm going to recommend are ways to unify your team, enhance your culture, regardless of generations. In fact, there's experience that we can gain from each other. Would that be fair to say? You know that most organizations that have some sort of succession plan or exit strategy for people that are about to retire usually wait too long to start transferring the experience. So you have somebody that worked there for 30 years, just a ton of experience and knowledge. And then the last few months are there, they're trying to get all of that information out of that person. In the military, it happens daily. And as you know, I have a background that I was in the Marine Corps. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But the military has been around 248 years, and they're constantly transitioning. The military deals with generational differences too. But their goal is to unify and make sure that we hit mission. How many generations are represented in the military right now? You're military, because you guys pay taxes, right? Everybody here pay taxes? Okay, 4 of you? Okay, fair enough. Military use your tax dollars. Did you know that Gen Z is entering the military right now? The bulk of the military are millennials right now. Millennials are running the show. Gen X is retiring. There's very few of us left. They're retiring. I went in 1987, so as enlisted, I can only serve 30 years. But there's some generals, some of the seniors that can serve longer, but Gen X is retiring. But most of the 4 stars that run the branches, the commandants or the chief naval officer, they're Gen X and they're retiring. But then you still have 2 other generations. Does the military have to deal with the boomer generation? They do. In fact, the Secretary of Defense is a boomer. The Commander-in-Chief is a traditionalist based on age. So President Biden, they have all 5 generations right there. And they're preparing for Gen Alpha to come in. So it's there too. Okay, now, Jason alluded to the fact that we will be very interactive. And by the way, amazing job on the polls that we did on Tuesday. There was a lot of feedback that came in. So if you weren't here on Tuesday, you can scan this ginormous QR code. You also have that on your notes. If you have the notes in front of you, there's a QR code there too. Look at how fast the millennials and Gen Z get online. You may have to help some of my fellow Gen Xers out there, right? I know I did. I remember, anybody else out there get confused at what a QR code was when you first saw it? I kept staring at them thinking I knew what it was, but I had to have a millennial tell me. And then just type in the passcode TG90. As soon as you see my face, we will be ready to rock and roll. Or as Jason said, we'll be ready to kick some ass virtually. Okay, you guys there? Everybody got my picture on your phone? You can screenshot it for later. Awesome. How many of you agree that we may have to make some shifts based on new generations coming into the workplace? How many would agree with that? So I want to share one shift that I had. I'll share a couple shifts I've had to do in my own company. Number one is my books. When I first started, I had hard copies of my books, which I have. And a lot of the older generations, they want hard copies. Then the millennials were requesting the Kindle version. They wanted it on devices. And then now everybody wants it on audio. And so the same content is being delivered differently based on some generations and some preferences. When I share stories, I have to make sure everybody understands it. And so when I first started my company, I'm a big fan. Anybody like 80s action movies? Arnold, Stallone, Chuck Norris, Van Damme, Seagal, a few of those guys, right? And 80s TV shows. Awesome. When I first started my company, I would talk about the A-Team. Anybody ever seen the A-Team? Who has ever heard Mr. T? Who has no clue who Mr. T is? All right, just a few. And what does Mr. T say? What did he say in every episode of the A-Team? Thank you. All right, yeah. And in fact, in the 80s, when you watched that show, you waited for it, and you said it with him. I pity the fool, and I ain't getting in that plane with that fool. And then when you went to school the next day, you said to your teacher, when she said, did you finish your homework? You said, I pity the fool that gives me homework. And then they sent you to the principal's office. They didn't appreciate that. So here's what was interesting. 2 members of my team at Think Greater Millennials, and they had to have the discussion with me saying, you need to kind of explain the A-Team thing a little more. Most people didn't watch the show. So I've had to adjust, right? Luckily, they made a movie, so I can incorporate that a little bit, but I've had to shift a little bit. We've also had to shift. Not only do I do keynotes live like this and workshops and seminars, we have an online academy because some people want to learn online. And so we've had to shift internally, and you will have to shift. And you're going to have to shift when Gen Alpha comes in. Now, there's a lot that we need to learn about the generations. And so today, we're going to learn how to really harness the power of the generations through leadership and communication, understanding the generational differences, but most importantly, the strengths and how to lead them. And it's amazing. It's amazing when you can tap into that experience. So on Tuesday, I asked you this question, and I hope 4 days later it's the same answer. Okay, so if you weren't here Tuesday, there's a little icon in the bottom right-hand corner, so you can take some notes. What is the greatest asset at KE? People. We all agree with that, right? Well, let's see here. This is technology. Hold on. I got this. Yeah, okay, people. People are our greatest asset. How many agree with that? And how many, we're going to just set the stage here for understanding that a lot of the differences in the workplace are generational based. How many have ever been stressed out by somebody you work with? That hand went up so fast, brother. Jeez. All right, not here, of course. How many have ever been stressed out by someone in a different generation than you? Okay, without mentioning the generation, what is something that you've run into, an obstacle that you've run into with another generation? Don't say boomers or millennials. Don't say the name. What is something different about other generations than yours? Okay, hold on. Let me. Instant gratification. Instant gratification. All right, fair enough. And what was the other one? Angry. Angry. So your other generations are angry? Mad at the world. Mad at the world. Entitlement. Unwilling to change. Common sense. When you say common sense, are you saying some lack common sense? Okay. And how many of you are referring to your own generation there, or was it some other generation? All right, can anyone tell me the negative stereotypes of your own generation? That's what I thought. All right, yep, that's what I thought. Okay, now we also talked about teamwork being important. On a scale of 1 to 10, and we talked about this on Tuesday, we said teamwork. The idea of teamwork is a 10 out of 10. The idea of teamwork, looking out for each other, having each other's backs, looking out for the person to our left and right, that's a 10 out of 10. We love that idea, don't we? How would you rank current teamwork right now at KE? If a 10 means every single person shows up every day bringing their A game, they're part of a cohesive unit. They look out for everybody, the person to their left and right. They exemplify the culture. How would you rank teamwork right now? If that represents a 10. Say again? 7.5. Anybody else? Teamwork. Like you know it when you feel it, right? You show up and people perform as a team, not a group, as a team, right? How would you rank it? Jason, do they have permission to speak openly and honestly? Absolutely. Let's do it. What would you rank current teamwork? We can't get better if we don't know what the number is. 6.25. We got an engineer in the house. Okay, fair enough. 6.25. I like that. An 8, 9. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? This is your team. 8? Okay. So the highest we have is an 8. We have a B-. How many agree teamwork could be better than it currently is? How many would agree it would be so incredibly better to show up every single day if everybody brings their A game every day, performing as a team member, not a group member? Would that be better? I even got a woo. We got Ric Flair in the house? Woo! I like it. All right. Okay, let me explain to the Ric Flair, the nature boy. What did Ric Flair say every episode, right? Yeah, that was his call sign, right? Woo! You got to watch old school wrestling. Although I think his daughter, Charlotte Flair, does it too now. So whatever, carrying it on. Okay, I want you to look at these two pictures. I'm a dog. Any dog lovers out there? Who loves dogs? All right. Anybody hate dogs? Just one guy? All right. Appreciate the honesty. Do we have any cat people out there? We do have some cat people. Okay. All right. Fair enough. We can all get along. These two pictures of dogs, one of them more represents a team than the other picture. If you look at the left picture and the right picture, in your opinion, which one represents a team? Right. Every single human being picks the side on the right and says that is a team. When it comes to animals, we can identify teams so fast. But when I go into organizations, sometimes people tell me we have a great team, but when I peel it apart, it's more of a group. Now this is a team, you can feel it. But we already agreed this team could be greater. Is that fair to say? We could be greater, we could be better, stronger, all that. So this represents more of a group. And groups and teams are different. It's a mindset. And there's no bad dogs over here. I wouldn't say you need to call the Humane Society and have them taken away. But what would happen if we took one big meaty bone and put it in the middle of that group? What would happen instantaneously? Survival of the fittest. What do you say? Tear themselves apart? Yeah, chaos. So when we perform as a group, we could create a lot of chaos that's unnecessary. Would we agree with that? Now the dogs on the right, they're a team. They're going somewhere. Teams know where they're going. They have a destination in mind. That team happens to be running the Iditarod, which is about 978 miles, some crazy distance. Takes weeks to complete or something. They're pulling a sled of 400 pounds. And they have a leader on the back. There's the leader. Does anybody know what the title of the leader is on the back of a sled? The musher. It's the weirdest title ever, right? I got to share the stage with a musher one time. And I told her, I said, I have a slide of a musher. This is so great. And she told me all about each of the dogs, all their personalities, their differences. Now, when those dogs run, they bark at each other. They're constantly barking. And science says they're sending a message to each other. Does anyone know what that message is? I don't speak dogs, so I can't confirm it. But what do you think science determined that the barks are saying, the dogs are saying to each other? What are they saying?
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay, wait a minute. What was that one? I don't speak dog. I'm going to go with that. I like that one, and I will probably use that on certain audiences, so thank you. So what the scientists discovered is the dogs are encouraging each other. They're barking words of encouragement in dog to help each other go the distance. Is KE a growing organization? Are we going to grow and kick some butt this year? Could we encourage each other more? How many feel we could do a better job of just daily encouragement? Okay, empowerment, praising, recognizing. Okay, and this is what we need to focus on as leaders, because I believe, as I said on Tuesday, that we are all leaders, even if nobody reports into us. Now, the interesting part about all this is that the dogs understand the role of the musher. Sometimes more than people in the workplace understand the role of a leader, because maybe it hasn't been defined as much as it should be. Now, I'll give you a couple ideas on the differences between a group and a team. When people have a group mindset, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means they're performing differently. And so when you look up here, a group versus a team, when people have that group mindset, they tend to act as individuals. They think only of themselves. How many have ever worked with somebody who's very selfish? Just only thinking about what's in it for me. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they're not functioning as a team member. Or somebody who focuses only on their personal objectives. Or somebody who performs in the moment only. They're kind of stuck. How many of you ever worked with somebody who's negative, whines, gossips, or complains? Group members. Group members. That's a group member mindset. They're stuck in the moment, but a team is different. A team is a cohesive unit. A team focuses on common objectives, shared goals. And you guys have that because I saw your VTO. You have shared goals, rocks. I can speak your language. These are things that unite us, right? All the dogs are going somewhere together that unites them. But here's the biggest thing, they perform for the future. Do you have a vision statement here? A statement of the vision for the company? And without looking at your VTO, can anybody tell me what the vision is? Don't look, don't cheat. What's the vision? Okay. Could we do a better job of sharing vision more? Could we start meetings off with vision? Because we want to become a team, not a group. So I have a very important question for you. So we're going right into the polls. So you can use your phones now. But don't answer it yet. All you got to do is touch the left side or the right. The majority of the time, all right, you guys are already touching, just such initiative. 51% of the time or more is the KE team performing as a group or as a team, a cohesive unit. And it's just your opinion, just your thoughts. It's all anonymous. We won't know who said it. So we're kind of a 50-50 here. So I'm going to prove this point. Are there any Vikings fans in here? Is there anyone else that wants to admit that they're a Vikings fan? Like 4 guys? All right, all right. If they were winning, we'd be like, yeah. That's all right. I'm a Raiders fan, so I understand your pain. All right, what other favorite teams do we have in here? Tampa Bay, all right. Green Bay Pack. Okay, who's our Pack? What's that? The Bears? The Bears. All right. How many Packer fans do we have in here? All right. We're in Minnesota. Let's just see. Can we get some enthusiasm? How many Vikings fans are here? All right. We'll work on that. Sure. How many of you have ever been frustrated when your team, professionally paid athletes making millions of dollars a year, thank you, sir, cannot function as a team? They function as a group. How many of you have ever yelled at your television? Because you get stressed out. You know their capabilities. And you see them perform like a group. Did anybody watch the Super Bowl? I think it was the Falcons against the Patriots. The one where the Falcons were ahead, 20 points at halftime? 25? 23? All right, so over 20. That we can agree on. And at the halftime, Coach Bill Belichick talked to his group of players. And who was the quarterback? Tom Brady. And they were losing. And normally, if you're down over 20 points at halftime in a Super Bowl, you're done. Who won that game? Tom Brady and the boys. And Tom Brady did win that game. Did Coach Bill Belichick teach them at halftime how to play football or how to come together as a team? Every single day, our role is to bring people together as a team, to exemplify the KE way, and to go there to our goals, to our vision, to our mission, and to unify everybody regardless of the generation. All right, I get excited. Wow, look at all those responses. Okay, so if you have a group, and it could be maybe this department focuses more as a group than this one. When we have a group, we got to get the dial going this way to become a team. Get them more cohesive, get them focused on the future. If you have a team, like a football team, not a music group, but a football team, if you have a team, you got to get them to that championship level. Keep them practicing, keep them developing. Okay, now I'm going to show you a slide that I created about 9 months ago because around the country, people started to want to level up. And I talked about this on Tuesday, and this is important for a team. Does KE have competition out there? Other organizations that will take your business? Do you have competition that will not only take your customers or clients, but will take your people? They will be unapologetic about it, correct? When I ran a media company in Southern California, we were blocks away from some of our competitors. And if we dropped the ball, they would pick it up and run it in and score and not apologize to us. It was actually our fault. So teamwork is critical. And here's what's important. In the last 9 months, so many people want to level up of all generations. It's not a fluke. They want to go to the next level. And what I say is there's really 3 levels of ascension. Anytime we experience a challenge. How many have ever experienced a challenge in the workplace? Challenging time, difficult scenario. I'll even use the pandemic and say we all experienced that together. When there's an experience, we have the opportunity to have a realization. We start to think about things differently. That's what's happening in the world right now. They're thinking about things differently. As soon as we have the realization, we say, okay, can I make it through this? I had an experience in boot camp. Where are my other service members out there with vets? When you meet your drill instructors or your drill sergeants for the first time, you have an experience. And then you have a realization. There was a point in boot camp where I said, I will make it through this. And then the transformation can begin. Transformations are important for people, and no one is too old to have a transformation. Sometimes you'll hear older generations say things like, why I don't like all this technology stuff. How many have ever heard that one? But on their phone, they'll have a Starbucks app, they'll have Netflix. Everything is a perceived challenge until there's value added to it. There's plenty of people, and then the traditionalists in the workplace right now, that stream movies now. When back in the day, all they could do was pay a dime, and they'll tell you it was a dime to go see a movie. And now they'll stream them. Teams have to add value to everything we do. So here's where we are right now. We have this unique time where we can make a decision to have a transformation and be the greatest team that's ever existed in this industry. On Tuesday, I shared with you what my full-time job was in the Marine Corps. I was in that control tower. At that point, I was the youngest generation in the Marine Corps. Now my generation is the oldest generation in the Marine Corps. Kind of weird. I was 18 years old controlling traffic. They never, ever, ever referred to us as Gen X. Ever. What did they call us if we were in the Marines? Not what the Navy called us. But think about this for a second. They unify people in the way they talk to them. Do the words we use have meaning? We talked about this, right? What do you call people on staff at KE? What do they call them? What's that? Like if somebody gets a paycheck from here, what do you call them? Employee. So let me talk about some words that will unify everybody. When you guys were growing up, some of us when we were in high school, way before some others, how many of you when you were in high school and the career counselor said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Said, I cannot wait to be an employee. Anybody? How many said employee when you were asked that question? Nobody. Why do we call people that? It's a weird name. I was in the Marine Corps, so they called me a Marine. The Navy called me a jarhead. They called me a Marine. If you were in the Navy, you weren't called an employee, you were called a sailor. If you're in the Army, you weren't called an employee, you were called a soldier. If you are in the Air Force, you are not called an employee, you are called an airman. Okay, here's the biggie. Let's see how good you guys are. If you are in the Space Force, you're not called an employee, you're called a what? A boot? Okay, that's some veteran humor. You're going to have to get an explanation from that gentleman after this course. That means a real noob. Boot, noob. What do you call somebody in the Space Force? I wanted to not like the name. I went into this going, I'm not going to like this. Anybody have an idea? What do you call somebody in the Space Force? A what? Space Ranger? That would be awesome. Like Buzz Lightyear? No. To infinity and... Okay. You actually call him a guardian. So I met with a friend of mine. He's a former Army Ranger. And so we met up at dinner. He had found out what the Space Force was called. He has a brother that's a 3-star general in the White House or in the Pentagon. And I had found out what their motto is. And so he told me they're called guardians, as in guardians of the... It's so great, isn't it? Their actual logo looks like what? Star Trek. At first I saw it, I'm like, that's a joke. And it's real. It's the Star Trek. Very similar. Their motto. So the Marine Corps motto is... Semper Fi. And anybody know what that means? Always faithful. Not sometimes. That'd be weird, huh? Sometimes faithful, when it's convenient. No, it's always faithful. Just like the Navy is always strong, semper fortis. The Coast Guard, semper paratus, which is always prepared. And the Space Force is semper supra, always above. Why do they have unique names for their team members? Because it doesn't matter what generation you're a guardian, you're a Marine, you're a sailor, you're a soldier. Here at KE, is teamwork important? Then you don't have employees, you have team members, right? And we have to speak in empowering ways where people want to be part of something special, part of something great. I am a team member. At the media company, we eliminated, I'm not telling you to do all this right now, we eliminated the word employee because the owner kept saying, I want to have a team, a team, a team. And yet we had an employee handbook and an employee lounge. And then we hired people and said, they're great employees. And so we shifted it. We took employee out of everything. And this allowed people to be a part of something great and something special, regardless. Marines have been called Marines since 1775. Army, soldiers since 1775. Did you know the first people in our armed forces were born around 1750? Isn't that crazy? And the new generation, Gen Alpha, is being born right now. They'll be going into the military in about 7 or 8 years. So my grandson, he's 7. So 11 years, he'll be eligible to go. Now, how did they get me up there? Here's what's going to unify every generation. How many are familiar with this symbol? The Chinese philosophy called yin and yang. Does anybody know what it means? It does mean balance. And it means opposites are required for balance, hence black and white, but two separate forms that are similar, right? They're the exact same. Opposites are required for balance. In order to get me up in the control tower, here we go, come on, technology. We have to have the first part, yin, which is training. Do you have training here for new people? Do you have training for existing people? Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your training? It could be 1 through 10, it could be 6.25, whatever you guys got. Okay, let me ask it differently. Could we do a better job of training people? How many would agree that we have some room for improvement in training? We can make that greater. Okay, fair enough. And that came up on some of the polls. Here's the biggie though. Here's the complete opposite, and it's two different things. Development. You see, I was trained as an air traffic controller. I was developed to think and act like a leader. Job training and leadership development are two completely separate disciplines. In fact, they remove you from training, they remove you from your job to develop you as leaders. If you want to unify everybody, we unify them under leadership. Because everybody here has somewhat different job titles, would that be fair to say? But how many leaders do we have in the room? Just a quick show of hands. Who's a leader? And by the way, every hand is supposed to go up. So I'll ask it again. Since you're being videoed, how many leaders do we have here? Everybody. There's 2 million men and women serving in the United States Armed Services. How many leaders do they have? 2 million. That's why we have the greatest armed forces in the history of the world, because it's a leadership factory. It's not a war machine. Whew, man, that's good. Okay, so we need to plant leadership seeds every day. We need to speak as leaders every day. We need to have a definition of leadership. We need to have traits and principles, things that we speak as leaderships. We have to lead people, coach them, guide them. How many have ever had somebody older than you report into you? How many have ever felt a little awkward with that? How many have ever felt the other person didn't like that was older than you? Did you know what happens every single day in the military? Did you know that if you are a new lieutenant, 22 years old, what's your name? Zach. So Zach is fresh out of college. He just got his what they call the butter bar, the gold bar on. He's a second lieutenant. And I've been in the Marine Corps 29 years. I'm a sergeant major. I've got 29 years in. I got all kinds of ribbons and medals. But he's a second lieutenant. I would call him sir. And I would salute him. Now, what does he gain from me? Experience. I'm a liaison to the rest of the Corps for him. I help him to become a better officer. So it's not odd in the Corps that age differences are all over the place, but we know exactly who to salute. And I would give him a proper time of day, greeting, and a proper hand salute, and refer to him as sir or lieutenant. In the workplace, it's weird sometimes, right? Like sometimes I remember the first time I was 30 years old and I had somebody that was 60 report into me. I was so confused. I'm like, what do I tell them? As soon as we started to develop leadership in that company, we had a bond. We understood each other's roles. So we can fix that. We can fix that. And the other thing too is sometimes you were friends with people and then the next day you're their boss. How many have ever had that happen? And job training won't help with that. Leadership development will. Leadership development is the secret sauce. Most organizations need to improve their training. Just get a little bit better training. Most organizations don't have leadership development happening. The fact that you kicked off this 4-day event with leadership for the first day is incredible. Most organizations don't do that. So remember, it's the yin and the yang. It's the training and development, and we have to speak more as leaders. Okay, so here's the 5 generations currently in the workforce. In fact, even though there might be 4 here, if you were to go to a Walmart, there's all 5 right there. Who is the greeter? Who greets you at a Walmart? The traditionalists. And then you'll see the rest of them spread throughout there. Are there differences among generations? Okay. So we got boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and there's a lot to be said that we're the products of our environment. We do things differently. Let's just talk about music for a second. What is your favorite band? Okay, and this is interesting. What is your favorite music group? Because we don't listen to music teams, right? What is your favorite music group? Anybody? Did I hear Foo Fighters? All right. Anybody else? What generation might he be? He could be X, or what generation are you?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. All right. Good thing. This is why it's good that we have this class today, because we're going to tell you the age groups of these generations. Okay, who else has a favorite band? Sorry, no judgments? Sure. Backstreet Boys are awesome. Anybody else have one? Fleetwood Mac. Okay. All right. George Strait. There you go. What's that? The ace in the whole band. Yeah. So a lot of times when people are stating their favorite bands, you can tell what generation they're from. Also, how they listen to music. Here's how the 5 generations predominantly consumed content called music. The traditionalists listen to the radio. The boomers listen to records. This is primary. Now, some of us are going to cross over. Gen X, cassette tapes. Millennials, CDs, and Gen Z, streaming. How do you listen to music now? Who listens predominantly to the radio? Like you turn the radio on in the car. Who's still listening to that? Okay. Who streams in the car? So I do a lot of coaching with broadcast organizations all over the country. Do you think they're having to shift radio stations the way they promote their content? Big time. Can you now stream radio stations? They evolved. They transformed. I was actually a part of. Anybody in here listen to Score North? They do the Daily Purple, right? They talk about that. I was there in a think tank session when they created that organization. Say we got to get sports streaming, and that was through Hubbard Broadcasting. And I was there in that session because they needed to transform based on how people are listening to music. My daughter, when she gets in the car, my daughter is a Gen Z. She doesn't have a radio station she listens to. It's all streaming. My grandson doesn't even know what a radio station is. Gen Alpha, things are different. Now, here's the top 5 generational challenges that are mentioned in the workplace. How many find it difficult to communicate to another generation? How many have ever experienced that? Yeah, it can be difficult. How many have ever realized there's a embracement of technology that's different based on generations? How about negative stereotypes? Has anybody ever experienced a negative stereotype based on the generation that you're in? Millennials, let me ask you a question. Has anybody said the word millennial in a derogatory way to you? 100%. That's the millennial phenomenon. We're going to get to that. This is very important. Cultural expectations. This is very different, right? We all have different expectations on how we treat culture. And, this is a biggie, a lack of respect. How many feel there should be more respect in the workplace? All right. How many have ever experienced a lack of respect? from a different generation. Because it can go up and down, right? They can disrespect each other. How does the military deal with that? If you were in the military, one of the very first things that you were taught was how to show respect with a non-verbal movement. What is that? It's a salute. Everybody's taught. Every single person in every single branch salutes the exact same way to say, I respect you. And then you return the salute. When you see them get on, president get on Marine Corps One or Air Force One, whoever is there salutes the president, the senior person, until the salute is returned or that person walks past. Sometimes the commander-in-chief forgets to salute. It's happened. It happens, right? They don't always think about it. I'm sure running a country with 300 million people, you got stuff on your mind. But they forget sometimes, but they'll hold that salute until the person walks past. It just means respect. And so they immediately teach respect, not of any one generation, but of all in the workplace. Are there any other generational challenges that you've experienced? What are your thoughts? Working with other generations other than your own, have you experienced any challenges? Oh, let me ask it differently. Out of the 5 that are up there, which one do you experience the most? Work ethic? Ooh. Teachability. Sometimes it feels like other generations might not want to learn or lack the work ethic. You know what? What's a popular phrase you hear right now? I mean, how many have heard work-life balance? Been hearing that one a lot lately? Oh, that comes up. I deal with that one all the time. And what's interesting is I find that when somebody says, I need more work-life balance, what they're saying is I need to work less, but get paid like I work more and not do any work. That's the majority of what comes out. Some people need to balance some things out, but most people, it's a work ethic issue. Anybody else? What's the number one difference you're noticing between the generations or the biggest challenge you face? The accepted source of truth. We're going to address that. Each person delivers their version of their truth. Is that fair to say? Okay. Now, there we go. So let's talk about this. People have perceptions of other generations, right? We think certain things. There's a cliche out there that says perception is reality. It doesn't say it's the truth. It doesn't even say that it's right. People have perceptions and they'll hold on to those perceptions. They'll hold on to them tight. So here's what we have the opportunity to do today. We have the opportunity to understand the differences and the strengths of each generation and alter our perceptions to create higher levels of unification. I'm going to recommend something that I learned in the military. How many know what an AAR is? Yeah, it's an after action review. And what that means is when a project or a mission or a goal, something is accomplished, those that are involved will immediately do an after action review and assess how can we be better. This is something I recommend for all of my clients. You can give it a different name if you'd like. Maybe you do something similar right now. But an AAR allows you to pull people in from different departments, different perspectives, different generations to share their thoughts on how to make things better. Can KE be greater than it is right now? How many would agree with that? And this is where we start to collaborate. Collaboration starts to bring people together. So we got to enhance. Now, perceptions. How we perceive things is all based on our experiences and our surroundings. So if you grew up just listening to the radio or the record player, it's a different experience. My first album, does anybody know, how many had a vinyl album at some point? All right, does anybody remember your first one? Dark Side of the Moon, nice. Pink Floyd, way to go. What's that? Kiss Alive 2. I had Kiss Destroyer. How many had a Kiss album at some point in your life? How many had a Kiss poster on your wall? Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not going to ask what other posters you had. Maybe Backstreet Boys, sure. Does anybody remember having cassette players? Does anybody remember the first cassette they bought? Molly Hatchet. AC/DC. Mine was what's that? The Damn Yankees. And mine was Foreigner 4. Okay, quick question. If you are of this particular generation, you know the answer. What does a cassette tape have to do with a pencil? That's how you rewind it in emergencies, right? Sure, okay. Now, the younger generation, you'll have to get a demo later on that, but if you had a cassette player, you had to have a pencil with you because when all stuff hit the fan, that was how you rewound your tape. If you're asking, okay, the cassette tapes had actual audio tape inside of it. Crazy. But back then we thought that was the hottest technology ever. So here's the labor force currently in the workplace. 2% are traditionalists, so they're going away. They're leaving. But Gen Z is picking up the momentum, and as soon as they're fully out, we're going to start seeing more of the Gen Alphas join the workplace. Boomers make up about 25%. You can see based on the years, 2020, 2025, and 2030. By 2025, traditionalists are out of the workplace. Boomers are out of the workplace by 2030. Gen X, we had 33% in 2020, 33% 2025. We start to dip in 2030. The millennials start to take over. And then we have Gen Z. By 2030, 74% of the workplace will be millennials and Gen Z. And we have to understand each other. Would we agree with that? We have to understand also what motivates. Now think about this. The majority of the military is millennial and Gen Z right now. The majority of the 2 million people. And they're hitting mission. You've got the youngest generation right now that will go into combat for you. They will do it. They just have to be, they're motivated differently. They're also trained a little bit differently. I revisited boot camp. I was invited. And so I went to boot camp in San Diego, California. Where's my Marines out there? Hollywood or Paris Island?
Hollywood.
Okay, so what does that mean? Can you explain what Hollywood is? West Coast Marine, and then Paris Island, East Coast Marine. So there's only 2 boot camps. All right, thank you. Thank you for the explanation. So I was a Hollywood Marine. When I went back to visit Hollywood boot camp, part of the rifle range had a tent set up, and they had these electronic M4s that you could fire and do practice on digital. Like they didn't have that when I was in. I actually thought that was pretty awesome. I'm like, I want to try it some more. So there's things. Technology is advancing and causing different shifts, but also different results. Now, let's just have an understanding of the generations. We can't respect that which we don't understand. They all went through something. Everybody has their challenges, the greatest challenges they face. They're traditionalists. They were born after the Great Depression. Their parents didn't trust anybody. They didn't speak out. If you took someone in the greatest generation or even the traditionalists and tried to get them to do a bank account, they were like, no, no, no. Where did that generation put their money? Under their mattress. How many of you store your money there? How many have your CDs, and I mean certificates of deposit, not... How many have money stored in your mattress right now? That's a shift. That used to be the majority of Americans after the Great Depression, right? When they lost everything, when banks lost everything, they shifted the way they did things. This generation is typically born between 1922 and 1945. How many of you have traditionalists in your family right now? Okay, you get to understand them a little bit better. Some of the most famous ones, we could have Martin Luther King Jr., Robert De Niro, Muhammad Ali. They were all traditionalists. 2 are gone. Oh, is Muhammad Ali still here? Or did he pass? He did, okay. So we got 1 left. And yeah. Everybody see Goodfellas? All right, there you go. So they're a product of their environment. So the traditionalists were very patriotic. They believe in teamwork. These are things that when you understand what fuels them, you can understand how to tap into them. Now, you may also encounter traditionalists outside of KE with vendors or suppliers, people you encounter. They have rules of order. They like hard work, but they have rules of order. They respect authority, most of them. Sure, not all of them. There's exceptions to every rule. They follow directions. To them, directions are very important. How many of you have directions that are more guidelines? I mean, in your field, I'm guessing directions are very important, correct? So you're going to find some areas you can relate to other directions. But here it is in the workplace. The stereotype, we just feel they're too old. How many have accidentally ever uttered that? Don't nudge anybody, but how many have ever felt somebody's just too old to learn something new? are too old to be in the workplace. I mean, I look at, there's a lot of professions where sometimes it feels like people are too old to be in there anymore, but they still have stuff to offer, right? So that's the stereotypes, but what are their strengths? Here's the important part. Yeah, you can take some notes on this. They have a very strong work ethic. They will get after it just differently than us. Strong work ethic, they have experience, and we have to tap into the experience and to gain the experience from them. And they're very disciplined. Most of them, still to this day, they're disciplined. And here's some tips for leading them. Even though they're leaving the workplace, show respect for their experience. I work with a lot of people of all generations, and even for me, I'll do a lot of speaking at veterans events, and there'll be some, they're still the greatest generation. Some of them are still there. Some of them show up to events. You just got to respect their experience. They may not hear me well. They may not look me up on LinkedIn, but I have to show a sincere respect for their experience. The next thing is we have to give sufficient time for them to actually process information that we give to them. They're just not going to get it fast. Like my sons are millennials. I call them all the time. I'm going to tell you something I do as a Gen X. Maybe you guys do it too, but I always say, hey, I just can't remember my password. It drives them nuts because they actually have a password sheet for me, but I'd just rather call them. And then here's where you go. Just do it this way. And I'm like, hey, while you're at the house, while you're here today, I want to get this new app on my TV set up. Would you just do that? So I tend to tap into the technology of different generations. It bugs them, but they have to learn how to work with me. They provide recognition for their contributions. This is very important. It sounds like what I hear is there's strong recognition here, strong appreciation for the work that's done here. Is that correct? Okay. And certain generations like recognition more than other generations. Is there a KE way of recognizing people? Like what's the number one way somebody's recognized for going above and beyond the call of duty here? What's that? A phone call. Oh, do you say a phone call? Yeah. So a leader may just call you up. Awesome. Anybody else? What's another way that recognition is strong here? Because recognition unifies people. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Any ideas on recognition you'd like to see? Because we're early in the year. What kind of recognition means the most to you out there?
Just saying thanks.
Just saying thanks. So I'm hearing a lot of verbals. In the military, not that you need to do this. It could be ribbons and medals, right? It could be a certification. It could also be verbal. So could we improve recognition here, the way we do it? And this is something as leaders, we have to find recognition that helps unify everybody. It's important. Now, make sure that everybody receives recognition for their contributions. All right, how many know some baby boomers? How many baby boomers do we have out there? I know we got one. Anybody else? Two? All right. So let's talk about them. 1946 to 64, give or take. This is a big generation here. People were coming back from World War II and having a good time meeting up with their spouses. If you catch my drift. And guess what happened? There was a baby boom. A lot of them. Cher, Oprah, Jeff Bezos, baby boomers. They're products of their environment. They were the single largest demographic. And they're all retiring right now. This is what's happening. They're starting to retire. In the military, you retire earlier, and then they usually go, they're still in the workplace after they retire, many of them. But from the workplace, boomers are starting to retire. How many know some boomers that have retired in the last few years? Okay. This is important. Boomers typically were catered to and coddled as a consumer. Everything was created for them. Houses, cars, everything catered to them from the moment they were born. Can that impact your perception on things? So think about it. It's raising up where everything's catered to you. Now here's the thing. Just like decades, right? You see the 80s come back. That came back a few years ago. I've started to see some 90s music come back, right? 90s are coming back. Generations tend to duplicate themselves too. Gen Z most represents or resembles the traditionalists. So those entering the workforce are very much like the ones that have already left the workforce. And it's very interesting. My two sons, millennials, are very different than my daughter who's a Gen Z. And when I look at their profiles, like, wow, that's them. It's crazy. So being catered to. Here's the biggest stereotype of baby boomers. They're stuck in their ways. How many have ever met a baby boomer that is just stuck in their ways? They're just not going to shift the way they do things. How many baby boomers in here feel that you're stuck in your ways, you will just never shift the way you do things? And so they didn't raise their hand because it's just a perception. But that's what we think because we talk to a few. They stick with it. Okay, but here's their strengths. Baby boomers tend to be optimistic. They were one of the first generations. They wanted to impact the world. They wanted to make all kinds of change, enhancements, make the world better for people. They were excited about life. Music revolutions started during their generation. They're dedicated, optimistic, hardworking, if they're in the right environment. Now, here's how we can lead them. We have to treat them as equals. Don't treat them like they're too old. Treat them as equals. Ask their opinions. Is it important that we ask people how they feel about things? What their thoughts are on things? Yeah, absolutely. We can't direct them. But as leaders, we can guide and coach them. How many have ever had somebody in the baby boomer generation report into you? Okay. These are tactics we have to learn. Those of you who have direct reports, soon you'll have not only Gen Z reporting into you, but you'll have Gen A reporting into you. And so we have to shift a little bit, understand how to communicate. Treat them as equals, ask their opinions, show respect for their input, knowledge. I mean, some of this is universal. We should do this with everybody. Use them as mentors. Right now, my CPA is a baby boomer. He was in Vietnam. He's a Vietnam Air Force guy. I just get out with him sometimes, not to talk business. I just talk experience with him. Like, tell me what you think about this. What do you see in this? Ask people what their thoughts are on things that are happening in the workplace, out of the workplace. They want to share. They want to feel valued. Transfer the knowledge and experience to younger team members. Not right when they're about to leave, but right now. Start getting off site with them. Have a lunch with them. Have a coffee with them and just gain that experience that they've earned. All right, now the greatest, my generation, Generation X. How many Generation Xers do we have in here? All right. We kind of grew up we were kids in the 70s and the 80s. Before I say what it is, are there any stereotypes about my generation? What's that? We don't remember passwords? Yes, that's me. Does anybody else in here struggle with passwords? Thank you, sir. Thank you. How many hate how many passwords you have to remember these days? It's just like there's so many. Drives me nuts. Okay. But this is our generation, at least mine, products of our environment. So Paul Rudd, Ant-Man, is Gen X. Shaq is Gen X. Angelina Jolie. We're a very good-looking generation, right, Gen X? Extremely good-looking. Gen X is the smallest of the generations now. So the baby boomers all cut back. Often referred to as the forgotten or the middle child. This is interesting. This is the last generation before we started to recognize people as the name of their generations. The millennial phenomenon is coming next. We are products of single-parent households, some of us. Remember the latchkey kids? The helicopter parents, the latchkey kids, where they would go home and there was no one. How many ever went home and there were no parents in the household? How many from Gen X had zero questions asked about how your day was? How many had nobody really following up or asking where you were? We were an unsupervised generation. Okay, Gen X, and maybe even the boomers on this one, but we knew what time we had to be home when what came on? Streetlights. Streetlights come. How many of you ever ran your tails off to get home right after that streetlight went off because you're just having so much fun riding your bike? And where did we drink from? The garden hose. It's amazing we're still alive. Survivors. Yeah, very unsupervised. Different than the way that I raised my sons and my daughter, where it's very, I know my daughter's in Florida right now, but And it's not a creeper thing. Like, I can track her on, how many have Life 360 on your phone? How many know where your loved ones are? And she can track me too, but I was never tracked. I just came home and had dinner and then left the next day. That was as a teenager. Nobody was ever home. Very different. Work-life balance, we do like that. Take your kids to work. How many have ever taken your kids to work? Okay, it all depends on what job you have, I suppose. Job share, 4-day work week, helicopter parents, stereotypes. We are accused of acting as the neglected middle children. All right, fair enough. We've got to accept some of the stereotypes. Some stereotypes are based in reality. But here comes the biggie. For the first time in our world history, people were about to be identified as their actual generation. When I grew up, I never heard the term Gen X. How many Gen Xers were ever called Gen X before right now? We didn't call our parents baby boomers. It wasn't used as much as it is now. Now for us, our strengths are we definitely challenge the status quo, right? The breakfast club. Okay, I get that. We're ambitious, we're adaptable, we got some negative qualities too. You can lead us. How many have a Gen X on your team that reports into you? Okay? You got to avoid micromanaging the Gen X, but I think you should avoid micromanaging everybody. You should lead them. We got to maintain two-way communication. This is important. Communication, how we communicate, allow interaction and participation, and help them to see how their contributions achieve greater results for the organizational goals. All makes sense. We can lead them tapping into the strengths. Now, something happened here with this generation. Something happened in the world with this generation. Born from 1980 to 1994, a 14-year span, Gen Y became known as millennials. And was that word said in a good context or a negative context? How many millennials do we have here? I'll call you Gen Y. Gen Y. How many like to be referred to as millennials? None. One? Mr. Millennial. Okay, fair enough. You got the title, brother. Okay, why? Why do millennials not like to be called millennials? It's derogatory. And what were people saying about you? Okay, hold on. Wait a minute. What's that? Okay, I haven't heard that one before, but fair enough. I hope you heard that all the way over there. I don't feel it's appropriate with me mic'd up that I say that one. Aside from that one, what else? What did people how did they describe you? Lazy. Okay, how many millennials again? Just a show of hands. Who's millennials? Keep your hands up if you're lazy. All right, fair enough. There's a stereotype. Is it possible that there were some lazy millennials out there? Is it possible there's some lazy Gen X? Is it possible there's some lazy boomers? Is it possible that the greatest generation, that there were some lazy greatest generations? Of course there were. But the millennials, something happened there. So much so I had to do a TED Talk on it. Talked about this phenomenon. And at that time period, millennials were now really infiltrating the military. So they're products of their environment. So you got Lady Gaga. This is your crew. Lady Gaga, Michael B. Jordan, and the Biebs. That's those are your people. All right. I like them all. I like them all. Maybe not as much as Backstreet Boys, but I think Bieber's good. I'm excited to see Lady Gaga in the new Joker movie. Yeah, as what's character is she going to be? Harley Quinn, right? So you got the Joker who's crazy. She looks crazy. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm all in. I agree with this statement. Perhaps the most misunderstood generation of all time. The millennials that are here today, how many feel you have something to contribute to an organization? How many of you have contributed to an organization? Okay. But yet that's not the stereotypes that are out there. They came of age, graduated from college, and entered the job market in the shadow of the Great Recession. How many of you were in the workplace during the Great Recession? There was nothing great about it. I always thought that was a weird name. It should be called the sucky recession. It was horrible. I ran the media company during the Great Recession. We actually grew through it. That's a whole nother topic. But my sons were part of that generation that came up here. Now, that's the stereotype, they're slackers, but it gets even worse than that. As soon as we started calling them millennials, and it was the weirdest thing. I mentioned it in my TED Talk. I said, there were people, I would be in meetings and people would say, those damn millennials, they're so lazy, they're disrespectful, they don't work hard. And I'm like, dude, he's sitting right here. Like they would say it in a meeting out loud like the guy couldn't hear him. They would just put him down. And that was my generation. That was the boomers doing that. I heard it and I'm like, this is wrong. So many of them out there want to kick butt. They want to take names. They want to make a contribution. They have so many great strengths if we tap into it. Now, it's not that you want to go around being called a millennial because that became a derogatory term. I was never referred to as a Gen Xer. Those damn Gen Xers. Nobody ever said that until this. Then I started hearing boomers being called those darn boomers, sometimes by millennials. They were striking back. Do you think our world as a whole, let's just take our country, this country, do you feel from a people standpoint, are we more unified or divided as a country today? 7 generations out there that don't understand each other. It's a big part of it. How many would like to see the world, maybe even just our own country, more unified? We deserve it, right? We deserve it. And we do that through leadership and through communication. And when we're divided, it's all through leadership and communication. Can the KE team be more unified than it is today? Could we be more unified, more cohesive? Of course, have more synergy. Of course, it's going to come down to tapping into our strengths through leadership and communication. Now, here were some, not all, some of the negative stereotypes I heard about millennials when the millennial phenomenon first happened. It is almost like every other generation blamed the millennials for everything. How many millennials ever felt that way? That we were all just coming down on you? Couldn't do anything right. They called them disrespectful, the youth, difficult, self-absorbed, entitled. I'm not saying some of them weren't, but couldn't have been all of them. Not in every organization. They're the bulk of the workplace right now. Is KE better today than it was last year? Are we a better company? And look at it. How many millennials do we have here? Just a show of hands. Look at all those Gen Ys. It's awesome. Opinionated, lazy, kids. The oldest, this is crazy. The oldest millennials are in their 40s right now. Isn't that amazing? How many, do we have any 40-year-old millennials here? Okay, for the rest of us, how many felt older when I just made that statement? It's crazy. Okay. So tell me some positive stereotypes. Let's start to find their strengths. Millennials don't say anything yet. Somebody else tell me a positive characteristic of somebody in that generation. Enterprising. Oh, I like that. That's pretty good. What else we got for our millennial base of team members here today? What's that? Oh, they are very creative. Yes. Tech savvy. They are. Say again? Somebody help me out on that one.
Technology analog.
Technology analog. They love tech. How many millennials in here love technology? Okay. So here's what I want to share with you. Positive stereotypes as we start to think about this. When I created this presentation, this was the age of these world leaders. At that time period, they'd be considered millennials. Anybody ever heard of Gandhi? Yeah, okay, we've heard him. Like, you know you're famous when you're known by one name, right? Gandhi. He was 31 years old. How many millennials in here are in your 30s? 31 years old when he volunteered to form a group of stretcher bearers as the National India Ambulance Corps. 31 years old. And he wasn't young, he wasn't lazy. He was the same age as our millennials now. Martin Luther King became a civil rights activist early in his career as a Baptist minister. He was 26 years old when he started to lead the civil rights movement. Mother Teresa, At age, okay, this is crazy. This is mind-blowing here. At age 12, was convinced she should commit herself to a religious life. 12. What were you guys doing at age 12? All right, maybe don't answer. Be careful how you answer that question. Was anybody thinking about what you're going to commit the rest of your life to at age 12? Anybody in here? Okay. Listen to this. At age 18, she left home. All right, how many left home at age 18, especially if you went in the military? All right, fair enough. To join the Sisters of Laredo, she took her solemn vows at 27 years old. And Mother Teresa helped millions of people, the poor of Calcutta. People are still doing work in her name. Yet 27, 26, 31, that's the age of our millennial group right now. Age doesn't matter, ambition matters, opportunity matters. We have to tap into what their passions are. How many of you are passionate about something in here? Anybody passionate about something? You don't have to say what it is, but like something fires you up. I'll tell you what fires me up. It gets me going every day. I'm fired up about military spouses, helping them. Like I have a vision statement for that. Enrich the lives of military spouses. So we award scholarships. We did $100,000 last year in scholarships just to military spouses. Can anybody share what fires you up the most? What are you most passionate about? Even outside of work even? Teaching. Teaching? Nice. All right, one person likes teaching, the rest of us, any other thoughts? What drives you the most? What would you do for free? Say again? Teach. We got one fired up. Get this guy in charge of vision here. Yes? Help high school football players go to college? Awesome. Anybody else?
Play golf every day.
Play golf. You're passionate about playing golf every day? Fair enough. I like it. How many like playing golf? All right. Does anybody else have a passion that drives them? An organization that they help out or support? Coaching. Yeah, teaching, coaching. Here's what I'm saying is that every single person in here has the ability to unleash some passion. And we have to ask what those questions are. Here's all the positive stereotypes about millennials. How many of the millennials agree that you are tech savvy? Okay, how many believe that you're pretty flexible? You can take on a lot of things. Adventurous. Any adventurous millennials out here? Yeah, they are kind of adventurous. Active, hopeful, engaged. Are there millennials in here that are actually engaged with KE? Who's engaged with KE if you're a millennial? Awesome. Passionate, connected, collaborative. Ooh, this is a biggie. Is collaboration important here? Did you know that millennials, Gen Y, specialize in collaboration? I have 2 millennials on my team. They do all of my technology side of things, all of the strategic initiatives. They'll present it, and they're brilliant at it. Every single thing I delegate to them, it comes back better than I thought, better than I could have hoped, ever imagined. And here's their strengths. They like to have fun at work. Any millennials out there like to have fun at work? How about the boomers? Any boomers like to have fun at work? All right, so they don't. So that wasn't one of their strengths. Are there any Gen X that like to have fun at work? All right, like half of us, we're like, I don't know. You know what's interesting? Here, I'm going to tell you, here's a strength that they thought was negative about millennials, but you're going to find it with all the generations coming in. You got to do something about this. My dad was a boomer. My dad stayed at the same company for 35 years. He didn't even like the company, but wore it as a badge of honor. He's like, I was there for 35 years. I started here and worked my way up to here. And I'm like, well, how was it there? He goes, it was horrible. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, why did you stay? You know what the millennials do? They got accused of being job hoppers. Because if they didn't like the culture, they went and found one they liked. How many millennials in here have ever bounced, left a company because the culture sucked? You don't want to be there 35 years. At first I thought that was great that my dad did that, and I questioned everything. I'm like, what the hell was he doing? Why would you stay there? You see, they actually found a culture. How many of you love the KE culture here? Okay. How many feel the culture could be a little bit better? Well, we're going to talk about that too. Because culture will keep people regardless of the generation. They're also tech savvy, achievement oriented. Ooh, this is good. Do you know I have an online learning system? I have a whole academy. Do you know how much of it I built myself? Zero. I mean, I do the videos, but I have a Gen Y that built the whole thing, figured it out. That's not his background. He went to school to be in medicine. He joined our company as a biology major and built an LMS, a learning management software system for us. You got to tap into the strengths of other generations. Leading them, you got to be flexible with the Gen Y. You got to find ways to allow them to pursue activities too. They do like to have that flexibility. Set ground rules early. That's important. You got to set it early before they set their own ground rules, especially around technology use. How many have ever worked with people that they're on their phone too much during the day, but you're not sure why they're on their phone? How many have ever seen people on their phone in a meeting when the boss is talking? Okay. How many of you have kids that at home, there's 4 friends in the room and they're all on their phones texting or snapping each other? It's the weirdest thing, right? But then I look back and I go, well, you know, if in the 80s I had a cell phone, I guess I'd have done that too. And here's what's crazy. Like, I like you to call me. I want you to call me. I'm good. Just call me. I'll talk to you live. My sons are like, you know, just text me. My daughter is like, just snap me. Is there anyone in here, anyone else that does not like Snapchat? I just can't stand that thing. But I'm like, all right, well, I know, all right. Because Snap, if you send, it disappears. It's horrible. And I don't even know what my grandson's going to use. I got to figure that technology out now, which I'm going to have my millennials help me with that. Very frustrating. So we got to provide clear direction. This is true. Millennials love clear direction. They love to know the expectations, and they'll hit them. They'll actually hit them if you can map it out for them. Direction, support, regular feedback. This is huge. There's a lot of us in the workplace, like, we can work all day. We don't need any feedback. Just keep going. Somebody did 35 years. Both, I don't know if they make those noises here too, but that's how it was. But both millennials on my team, they love regular feedback. So we can course correct, not micromanage, but course correct. And you have to show an openness to their ideas. I'm telling you, this should be for every generation. Sometimes the ideas that are presented may conflict with your own ideas. Everything we have at Think right now started off with an idea I had, has become better because of the ideas of my team. Because we're harnessing the power of their generation, the way they were brought up. Okay, now here they are. Gen Z. How many have some Gen Z in your family? 1995 to 2009. Here they are. What is that, Stranger Things? Anybody ever watch Stranger Things? I've heard about it. I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's good. Is it good? Is it worth watching? All right. Okay. The only reason I heard about it is they played an 80s song in one of the episodes. And so all my Gen Z friends, or ex-friends, like, hey, check this out. They use I forget, Running Up That Hill by that song, right? And I'm like, all right, well, I'll give the show a chance. All right, so here's who's Gen Z in here? All right, here's your crew. Zendaya. Patrick Mahomes. All right, that's a good one. That's pretty good. Millie Bobby Brown. I guess she's in Stranger Things, right? And Godzilla. All right, so I do follow her. Products of their environment. Digital natives with little to no memory of life before smartphones. Let that sink in for a second. We have a generation in the workplace doesn't understand how to use smartphones. Maybe 2 generations. We have a generation that doesn't know life without it. You see, we have to be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome with all generations in the workplace. Number 2, they are creative, confident, and have a strong work ethic. Gen Z most represents the greatest generation, they say. How many of you in Gen Z feel you have a strong work ethic? I am. It's weird. My daughter, very ambitious. My daughter works different jobs to pursue her career of going into the medical field. She's so much better as a teenager than I was. How many of you, maybe like me, almost didn't make it out of high school? Okay, fair enough. That hand went up so fast, sister. Okay. But we made it, right? We got out. Yeah, sure. We didn't have a lot of parental guidance on that, but some of these kids today, there's so much great hope for the world based on how ambitious they are. They're the result of more mature Gen X parents. It's so weird. I was so young when I had my boys. I was older when I had Erica. I was a Mormon. Stereotypes of some of them work. And the economic turndown. Here's the stereotype. Don't necessarily always know if this is bad, but Gen Z tends to march to the beat of their own drum. Would anybody agree with that in here? If you know a Gen Zer, do they kind of do their own thing proudly? Yeah, they do. They do. And you got to figure out ways to work with them because they are infusing the workplace. In the next 10 years, can you imagine asking the question, how many Gen Z do we have here 10 years from now? It'll be half the room. Isn't that crazy? So we have to learn. We have to embrace all of these. Now, their strengths, they are definitely digitally connected. I don't shop online anymore. I just ask my daughter, can you find this and just buy it for me? They do it so fast. They are independent, they're problem solvers, and to lead them, we have to provide clear direction. Very much like the millennials, we need clear direction, support, regular feedback. The younger generations really want this. I'm assuming Gen A will be in there. They have to use performance-based rewards and promotion. That's huge. So listen to what's coming. The way we recognize has to shift. We have to think ahead of the curve on some of the recognition to keep everybody unified and provide people skills training. They want to be developed. My daughter's in a program. I don't even know if they had this when I was in high school because I barely made it out. So maybe they did. There's a program out here in Minnesota called MinCaps. Anybody familiar with that? It's like the health college courses in high school. These kids can go to it and start learning their craft before they even go to college and earn college degree or college credit courses. It's awesome. But here's the biggie though. This is what's coming. Gen Alpha, 2010 to 2025. So I'm not sure what's coming after Gen Alpha, but that's the next generation is going to be born in 1 year. Isn't that crazy?
Anybody? I don't know what it is. I haven't looked it up yet. Any ideas on what the next generation will be called? Gen Bravo. I know that makes sense, right? That would be a cool. What generation? Bravo. I would like that one. All right. So Gen Alpha. Who has Gen Alpha in the household right now? All right. I got grandsons. All right. So okay, let this one sink in. Gen Alpha arrived the same year as the iPad. How many of you, your form of entertainment, your game for your generation, how many of you only had access to pinball? How many have never played pinball in here? All right, how many of you had the Atari 2600? Still the best of all time. I mean, it was great, right? How many of you had Nintendo? These kids don't even know what that stuff really is. The gaming now, I mean, I thought Pitfall and Atari 2600, could it ever get better than that? It has, it really has. How many of you played Call of Duty? Zombie level? Who plays zombie level? I just need it. Okay, fair enough. I'll give you my gamer ID afterward. I'm always looking to team up. This is the most diverse generation in U.S. history, the most diverse. What are some of the trainings that are going around right now? As diverse as one of the letters in that acronym. DEI. DEI. How many have ever heard of that? I actually get asked to teach on that from time to time. Some generations will come to expect that. We have to understand what's coming. Most diverse. Okay, buckle up. There's 2.8 million Gen Alphas born every week. Every week. They're the first generation born entirely in the new millennium. How many were born at some point in the 1900s? Should be all of us. How many of you showed up today saying, I will not raise my hand once during our speech? Just checking. I know it's Friday. I know you got prime rib waiting and beer. You have another class and a survey first. All right. 60, but this is, okay, you have to be up with the times. 65% of Gen Alpha, let this sink in, will work in jobs that don't currently exist today. That means new titles, that means new responsibilities, new expectations, new job descriptions, new positions on the org chart. It's crazy. Do you know there's people in the military right now that are drone pilots? Do you know how many drones we had when I served in the 80s? None. We didn't even know what it was. We did have cool Harriers, jets that could hover, but now they have drones. They're are awesome, and I just bought my grandson a drone for his for Christmas. It says 14 plus on it, but I figured with the right super, he's only 7. It's kind of a gift for Grandpa too. This is amazing. Their story's still being written. We don't know enough about them yet, but it's coming. And next year, they will be the 2nd generation. There'll be another one coming after next year, maybe Bravo. Okay. Now, when we think about Tuesday, we asked about leadership challenges that we face. Make sure we keep this on time. How many have ever experienced poor communication in the workplace? Okay. How many have experienced a lull in morale from time to time? Okay. How many have ever experienced a lack of initiative? How many have experienced failed delegation? You delegate something off your plate, I didn't even get to finish. You did. You delegate something off your plate, it comes back in worse shape than it left, right? And how many have ever experienced subpar results? In other words, you were aiming for this, and we hit a little less than that, right? Okay. These are all magnified when you add in the generational differences. If we don't learn how to tap into the strengths of every generation in this room and learn how to lead them. And we're all leaders, right? So what I want to share with you is some leadership and communication ideas. So we can pull it all home and say no matter what generation that person is, they can contribute. They can be part of a cohesive team. They can help us to reach the next level. All right. Here's what I've discovered in 10 years of coaching, speaking, doing workshops, interviewing and assessing teams. 95% of people want to be part of something special and great. How many of you in here want to be part of something special and great? Okay, which means 5%. How many people do we have here today now? About 200? So that means 10 of you do, according to the numbers. Okay, which 10 of you do not want to be part of something? Okay, you don't have to answer that, because you're making video. Okay, so that means that we can't afford to bring on a 5%er. Is that fair? And you know what 5%ers are called? You know what the code name is for a 5%er? Is I'm just looking, you'll hear some leaders say this, I'm just looking to hire a warm. They're always in the 5%ers. Somehow it always works out that way. But just understand that number. 95% of people that I talk to said, I want to be part of something. I want to be aligned with a great organization, a great culture. 95%. And then some are like, no, I don't. So don't hire them. How many have ever worked with somebody who's disengaged? Can you tell when somebody's disengaged? So Gallup did a study in the workplace. Millions of people. They had this survey go out. And they found that 72% of the workplace is not engaged. They actually called it sleepwalking. That they show up to work like this. Has anybody ever worked with a sleepwalker? That's an interesting name given by an organization that assesses millions and millions of people, thousands of different companies, and they said these people sleepwalk through work. But here's the interesting part. Because if that's 72%, then that means in this room, and this survey doesn't apply here, of course, that means 144 people in here are non-engaged. Which ones here are non-engaged? Okay, good answer, good answer. But here's the crazy part. The survey goes on to ask this question. Do you actively undermine your coworkers? And 18% of the people said yes. That means 36 people in here, according to the survey, actively undermine. You know, it's a weird question. It was on the survey. How do they know the answer? They asked it. Do you actively undermine your coworkers? 18% of the people said, yes, I do. That's bizarre, because I think it's higher. I think in the workplace, it's got to be higher because active underminers probably lie a little bit too. How many have ever worked with somebody in the workplace that actively undermines their coworkers? You ever been there? Like they almost show up and they're just like, I'm going after you today. And they show up on a mission. How many have ever worked with somebody so good at negativity you think they got a degree in it? So good at complaining that they must be a master complainer. It's interesting. And here's the thing. Do you want to have a highly engaged team or a disengaged team? Highly engaged. And here's the crazy part about disengaged people. They let you know it. They're sending out the signals. Because they'll make noises. So, what's your name? Austin. So, hey, Austin, it's Monday. I just got to work. And just say, hey, Eric, how's your day going? Oh. Anybody ever have any grumblers in the workplace? And they like to let you know that they're grumbling. They're sending out the message that they're either sleepwalking or about to actively undermine somebody. And here's the crazy part. This same survey says that 25% of people out there are actively looking for a new job. How many of you have your resumes out? You don't have to answer, I'm just kidding. Honestly. In most organizations, can you imagine that would be 50 people here? I think after the pandemic, it went up as high as 3 out of 4. Directly after. 3 out of 4 people were looking for new work. Just unhappy, 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 unhappy. It's crazy. All right. According to that same study, only 13% of the workforce is highly engaged. That's 26 people. Who are my highly engaged people? I mean, just fired up to be here today. Who we got? Oh, look at you, already beating the numbers. Highly engaged. That means I'm excited to be here today. I can't wait to get to work. I love being part of a cohesive unit. I want to help you with your goals. I'm looking out for the person right left to right. I love our mission, our vision, our programs. I'm excited to be here. Wouldn't it be great? How would it feel if everybody was excited to be here every day? And exclude Friday afternoon after lunch. Just more enthusiasm. Okay, let me ask it differently. If that's the numbers in the workplace, if 87% are not highly engaged, they fall into the 72% or the other percent, if only 13% of people engaged, how would you feel if I told you only 13% of our military is highly engaged? How would you feel? What words come to mind? Scary, number one word. Scared. I feel scared. It's weird. How is it that as leaders don't walk into the workplace and get scared with such low numbers? How many feel that our role as leaders should create high levels of engagement? Should we engage our people as much as dogs do pulling a sled? Did you know that when they bark that encouragement, they can go further? How many of you know that when geese fly in a V formation and they honk at each other, it's the same message according to science? I don't speak goose, so I'm not sure. They said they're encouraging each other. Did you know that a V formation of geese can fly 71% further than a goose by itself? Did you know that teams can outperform groups every single day? Every single day we have to be cohesive. We have to think about creating cohesion and synergy and camaraderie. I know there's far more than 13% people highly engaged here. These are just the stats nationwide. Now here's the best part. As we pulled together our strengths, we learned how to lead people. A team, an engaged team member. What's your name again? Austin. So let's just say Austin was a sleepwalker, and I don't know if you are or not, so. If he was a sleepwalker, if he makes the decision to become engaged, 20% greater performance from him. How many of you feel that some of the KE team could perform at higher levels? They have to make the decision to become engaged. Make the decision. But what if I could do it for my whole team? I could have 31% higher productivity. If this is my team and my department, by us making the decision to be engaged, barking some encouragement at each other, honking some encouragement, speaking encouragement to each other, and we get engaged, 31% higher productivity. This is how we tripled our sales at the media company and almost eliminated every internal mistake, regardless of generation. You can get 37% higher sales. Would an increase in sales be okay in this organization? 37%, would that be okay? We did 300%, but again, it came down to leadership and unifying and having a message. But look at this, 300% greater creativity. That's the innovative side. That's the side that thinks outside of the box, 300%. If you can sustain engagement, empowerment, inspiration among your team, if you can create a sustainable environment for that, the culture, you can achieve 202% greater results. How many would be okay with 202% greater results? It's doable. It's not pie in the sky. I think I told you on Tuesday, I worked with one of the restaurants in Minneapolis to Twin Cities, Red Cow, Red Rabbit. You've heard of them, perhaps? 1 year of leadership development. That next following year, they grew 323%. I didn't give them any menu ideas. I gave them people ideas. 323% growth. I engaged with them for this next year, for 2004. Same thing, leadership, communication, unification. But I think when I met them, they were at 2 or 3 restaurants. Now they're at 8 and still growing. 202% greater results. So, question for you. How many of you own a butter knife? It really should be all of us raising our hands. So, Natalie, if you see anybody that didn't raise their hand, please make sure to get them a butter knife. Okay, leaders. I like to say that leaders are like blades. And how many leaders do we have in the room? You know the answer. Come on, raise your hands. It's all of us, right? You do not get steak and beer tonight until you raise your hands. All right, there it is. I think that leaders are like knives or blades. What does a butter knife do? Like, what's the general purpose of a butter knife? Any ideas? Spreads things around. How many have ever worked with leaders that just kind of spread things around? Never really accomplished much. How many have ever worked with a leader at any point in your career that person was a good person but probably shouldn't have been in charge of other people? Miscast. Underdeveloped, right? They became a leadership butter knife. They have the title, they don't know how to blaze a trail. They have the position, they don't understand the purpose on how to unify people, increase performance, greater results. A lot of butter knives out there. But there's another type of blade, and that's the katana. Does anybody know what ancient warrior used to use the katana? Samurai. The samurai. Woo, awesome. And they didn't just try it out and be like, hey, for an extra $1 an hour, you want to be a samurai? Does anybody in here own a katana? Did you say, yeah, one person. Awesome. What's that? Okay. I missed that one. I couldn't hear that one up here. I'm not saying don't bring it into work. That's probably against some sort of regulation compliance. But are those two blades created differently? All right, so here's where we pull it all together. When you want to create a katana, when you want to create a sharp leader, the katana has to go into the heat, the fire, the challenge, the obstacles, the way we can get better. We go into it, we don't want to run away from it. We go into it, and we get heated up, and then when we get taken out of there, they get pounded. They pound you, and then they cool you off, and then they heat it, pound it, cool it, and it's a process called forging or tempering, and it sharpens the blade. There's a lot of dull leaders in the workplace. There's a lot of dull leaders in the world. How many would just agree, in our communities, in government, in business, the world deserves sharper leaders than we have right now? How many would agree with that statement? Yeah, we all, leaders across the board could be a little sharper. There's a lot of dull ones, just spreading stuff around, never really cutting through, never really resolving things. Now, if you want a butter knife, where do you keep it? At home. Storage, right? Like that. That is not mine, by the way. It's stock footage. I do not have wallpaper on my in my utility drawer. Has anyone ever walked into somebody's house with a katana sword? Everybody ever seen a katana sword in somebody's house? And if so, where do they store it? They store it on the wall. They display it because it means something. How many of you ever walked into a friend's house and your friend had a butter knife displayed on the mantle? That'd be weird, right? Like, what is that? It's like, that's my all-time favorite butter knife. What does it mean to you? It just spreads things around. You see, we have the opportunity, leaders, to become katana leaders. Sharp, get the job done right, have purpose, and mean something. So, as we bring things together, here's what you all have. If there's 200 people here, 200 of us have a leadership bar. We have it. You know it's a leadership bar because it says it on it. If you roll it around, it has your name on the back. We all have it. And there's some things we could do with our leadership bars, right? We could set it down and do nothing. We could be on a power trip. We could take credit for our team members' moves, undermine them. If we have, can you imagine the possibilities if 200 people do what with their leadership bars this year? What should we do with our bars? We should raise them up. Could you imagine what this organization can become if 200 people, 200 here, and more out there, show up every day thinking and acting like a leader? They look at everything through a leadership lens. Imagine the possibilities. Now, there's 3 things that we can do with our leadership bar. And it all involves unification, and that's the whole point of the generations. The generations are divided now more than ever based on technology, and the millennial phenomenon where we blame things on generations. We have the opportunity to unify our leaders, to unify our team, and unify our message. And I'll give you kind of a few parting thoughts on all this. Some things that we could do. Number one, is culture important here? How many agree culture is important in KE? And in my opinion, culture is the spirit, how it feels in an organization, right? Like you don't get issued out 10 units of culture when you show up to work, right? Culture is something that we all contribute to. Can disengaged people affect culture? Can one person sabotage an entire meeting? Can one negative attitude bring morale down? Right? So we have to make the decision every day, not to show up to work, but to show up to win. As I see our BTO there, look at all the amazing things on there. We need to show up to win. We need to show up bringing our A game every day. We need to show up every day thinking and acting like leaders, and then we can accomplish anything. So, quick question for you. What words describe your culture? If you could throw out an adjective to me and say, our culture feels like this, and I'll give you an example. When I was in the air traffic control tower, I'll tell you, it felt stressful. It did. There was a lot of airplanes flying around. You had pilots' lives in your hands. There was so much. It could be stressful. But then it can also feel very empowering. What words describe your culture? Jason already said you could have straight talk today, right, Jason?
Right.
All right. What are some words? When you step into work, how does it feel?
Family.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Family.
Driven. Nice. Say again. Family. Oh, at first I thought you said failing. I'm like, let me get a better. So, okay. Family. Yes. Special.
Power.
Empowered. Kick ass. That's a theme today. I like it. Anybody else? Exciting. Any other words that describe your culture? So here's something that we can do as leaders. We can actually ask our team members to describe the culture. How do they feel? Because I understand in a big setting like this, we may not say all the words that come to mind, but we should get off site with people. We should have some one-on-one personal communication with people. Say, hey, how does our culture feel to you? And let them share that. Does culture impact performance? Which directly impacts our results. Okay, let me ask this question. In 6 months, I come back and I visit KE. How do you want to describe the culture? What do you want the future culture of KE to feel like? Maybe more of than it does right now. More of what? You want to describe your culture? You're going to hire somebody. Do we believe in hiring to our culture? And retaining to our culture? So you meet somebody like, I'd like to work there. Tell me about your culture. In 6 months, you want to say, our culture is so... What's that? Brilliant. Unified. Anybody else? Passion. Yeah, more passion. Anyone else? Say again? Evolved. I like that. See, a lot of these things have to be defined. These are great questions that leaders ask. Now, when there's a lackluster culture, how many have ever worked at a company that had a subpar culture? Just didn't feel good. Yeah, you can feel it. These are some things that you'll notice in a subpar culture. Maybe we focus only on the problem. Right? We don't solve them. We just focus on the problems. We have no shared values. There's a lack of trust. People aren't enjoying their job. That's fair to say. And the failures are tolerated. It's a sign of a lackluster culture or a dismal culture. How would you like to have a culture that's more empowering, passionate, productive, unified? It's interesting. So many of you already said these words. How would it feel if every day felt like that? Like what words come to mind? If you walked in every single day at KE and it felt like I did not add electric because of your industry. I'm saying more metaphorically electrical. What's that? Fire. Okay, hey, that's okay. I can take it. How would it feel if you had every day filled with more empowerment, passion, it was more productive, more impactful, more unifying, engaging, and electric? How would it feel showing up to an environment that had more of that? Any thoughts come to mind? Incredible. Would it be worth it? Peaceful. How many feel mistakes would go down with a culture more like that? Yeah. Okay. So, identity is very important. One of the reasons we have identity is so we know who we are, not just what we do. In business, in the military, in anything. Does KE have a mission statement? How many agree that we have a mission statement? And without looking, can somebody tell me the mission statement? We are on the mission to do what? Say again? Challenge accepted. That's our mission statement? Okay. That's the vision. Okay. Sometimes interchangeable. Okay, we have a vision statement, challenge, etc. What about the mission statement? Okay, I know it's Friday. Hold on, I'll give you an easy one. It's because it's right on there. What are your core values? Okay. How many of you feel we can talk more about them than we currently do? As leaders, start meetings off, have more dialogue with people, ask them their thoughts on that. Here, I'm going to help you out. Let's talk about identity in the military. Here's one from the Army. B. Oh, you can be. How about the Air Force? Aim. Right? Because it'd be weird if they said low, right? Okay, we had two choices. What should we do? Aim high. How about the Marines? Once a Marine? You know what's funny? Everywhere I go, more people know more identity in the military than sometimes their own organizations. And why is that? It's because, what's that? It is good marketing. And people are sharing it. People want to speak a certain language. They want to speak a language of leadership. They want to speak things that say, I'm part of this. And so here's what my recommendation is. Speak more about your mission, your vision, your core values. And I know it's Friday. We may not always talk about it on Friday. But these are ways that we can do it. So when I was in, I learned all about the identity of the core. Even those three words, earned, never given. I love that. If it was a promotion, it was earned, never given. Recognition, earned, never given. There were no participation awards there. They eliminated entitlement with those three words. But then they also had three core values: honor, courage, commitment. There were 200,000 Marines serving. Right now, there's 200,000, give or take. How many of those Marines know their three core values? All of them. How many people at KE should know the core values and live them? Same thing, right? There's veterans in here that served in the Marines many, many years ago. We still know the core values because they talk about them all the time. They exemplify. That's who we're part of. Okay. So we have to develop a unifying culture. Culture, it's like planting seeds. They'll grow. And so I want you to do a quick little assessment with me. When we plant things, amazing things can happen, but not always overnight. We can enhance our culture here by assessing it. So I took a snapshot of your office before I got here. Here's what it looks like. If you have a controlled environment like this, and you say, listen, I'm just going to grow some tomatoes, I'm going to grow some, whatever you grow, any gardeners here? All right, so whatever you grow in a greenhouse, is it possible that something could grow in your greenhouse you didn't plant? And what is that? Weeds, not weed, to be clear. Weeds. How many of you, I'm going to say it correctly, how many of you have ever planted weeds? Not the singular. How many have ever planted weeds at home, in your yard? How many have ever experienced weeds in your yard at home, but you didn't plant them? How many have ever experienced disengagement in the workplace, but you didn't plant that, did you? It's not in the job description, it's not in the mission, it's not listed to bring the highest levels of disengagement and negativity on a daily basis, but it shows up. And what happens if you don't take care of one weed in that greenhouse? What would happen? It spreads and takes over. What happens if you don't take care of disengagement or negativity in the workplace? It spreads and takes over. That's why we need leaders. And so I'm going to do a quick culture assessment with you. So write down your answers and then we'll add them up. And I promise this is the toughest math of today, but it's very easy. I want you to write down what your score is for these 5 elements within a culture: attitude, excellence, initiative, outcome, and unwavering. Just, you can write them down and we'll add them up. And I'm going to tell you what a 10 is. I want you to think about the entire team. I want you to think like a leader and assess these 5 categories right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank attitude in the whole organization? If a 10 means everybody brings their A game every day, that's a 10. Fired up to be there, that's a 10. So just jot your score down, because we're going to do a poll in a second. You can add it on there. Okay, number 2 is excellence. A 10 means we deliver everything correct and on time, the first time, every time, no mistakes. That's a 10. Base that 10 on that. How do we deliver? Number 3 is initiative. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank initiative? If a 10 means everybody shows up every day and does exactly what needs to be done without having to be told or reminded, that's a 10. Outcome. Everything that we do, every call, every meeting, every step in our process and workflow has an outcome, an end state identified, and everybody understands it. That's a 10. And the last one is unwavering. And what I mean by that is unwavering on our identity. A 10 means everybody knows our mission, our vision, our core values, any forms of identity, mottos, taglines, slogans. Not only do we know them, but we exemplify them. We live them every day. That's a 10. Once you have your score, just add that up and type in your score. Out of a possible 50 points, how did you rank the current culture at KE based on attitude, excellence, initiative, outcome, and unwavering? Special effects, better than Avatar 2, huh? Isn't it just better to watch? Because that's you, that's your culture right there. This is how it feels in there based on people having the right attitudes, delivering excellence, exemplifying initiative, understanding outcome, and being unwavering to who we are, not just what we do. Okay, so let's just, somebody put 100 out of 50. Awesome. Dog, long, all right. I'm having a feeling it's Friday. All right, fair enough. Hey, I appreciate humor more than the next person. I really do. Okay. So, I like that you just, there's some, it must be Gen Z, right? They march to the beat of their own drum. All right, fair enough, fair enough. So we do have a lot of people that said 40, which, you know, out of 50, that's 80%. 80% on culture. Here's what I'm seeing here. How many would agree that our culture could be slightly better than it is now? That we could have a more empowering, uplifting, and unifying culture? Okay, leaders, this is what we show up every day to do. How many feel that leaders should empower people? How many leaders in here have empowerment carved out every day to do it? Yeah. We all feel it's important, but we don't necessarily allocate time for it. If we allocated time for it, all these numbers go up. Even the bonks and the doubles and stuff goes up. We get more bonks. Okay. Fair enough. How many have already started happy hour? Okay. All right. Is on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is communication at KE? 10. How often do you train on communication? When's your next communication training session? Because we said it's a 10 out of 10 on importance, right? So it makes sense we should train on it, right? Safety. How important is safety at KE? 10. How often do you train on it? Okay. How important is communication at KE? How often should you train on it? Every single day. We should teach people how to communicate better. So I'm going to wrap it all up with this. Does anybody know who this is? A few of you do, yeah. You got a hoorah. Go ahead, say it.
Chesty.
Chesty Puller. This makes Marines want to say, I knew it was coming. We can't help it. We see the guy and we just like, I gotta say, yeah, 75, hoorah! That's our guy. The Army has Patton and Eisenhower. The Navy has Admiral Nimitz. This is our guy. This is the most decorated Marine in Marine Corps history. I shared the world with him for 2 years. He died in 1971. I got a picture of him in my bar downstairs. At night, Marines around the world say, good night, Chesty, wherever you are. Why? It's not because he's the most decorated Marine and has the biggest amount of chest candy or fruit salad. That's whatever. They give a great name to everything. It's because of his communication. Now I want you to imagine for a second that you are a young Marine, 18, 19 years old. You're thousands of miles from home. The enemy is out there trying to kill you. It's sub-zero temperatures. You're freezing based on the gear from the 1950s. You're running out of food and ammo. How do you feel?
Great.
Great. Hardcore crowd. Some of you need to enlist, and I got a guy you can talk to. How many would feel scared? All right, fair enough. How many feel that during a challenging time, communication is important? Huge. Leaders have to know what to say. We're not always developed that way, but I'm going to tell you what he said in just a second. In the Marine Corps, as in most of the branches, we sing songs when we run. Do you guys fall out for runs? Do you guys all fall out for a 5-mile run this morning? Okay, and you sing songs, right? As we all do. It was awesome. It was so engaging when I started there, and they had this song. Maybe you can repeat it after me. I'll say it, then you say it. But say it like you're in the military, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's just try it again. No beers until you do it right. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I love the Marine So it was very inspiring, and I felt like I could run forever like this. And then the drill instructor said this: if I die in a combat zone,
I die.
yeah, I was like, what the hell did he just say? What are we singing about? And then it goes on, box me up and ship me home, pin my medals upon my chest, tell my mom, I did my best. We sing about death. We sing about death because we might be in this situation. And so Chesty stood up. He didn't say it's above my pay grade. He didn't say this sucks. Here's what he said. He was very crystal clear. As the Marines were outnumbered, he said, Marines, they are in front of us, behind us, and we're flanked on all sides, both sides, by an enemy that outnumbers us 29-1. Is that crystal clear communication? Is there any misunderstandings? No. The average age there was 19. And then he added 7 words. Before I tell you that, how many feel there might be some challenges coming in 2024? Anybody feel we might face some challenges? All right, not saying you have to have exactly 7 words, but here's what he said. At the chosen reservoir in Korea, right after he said, we're outnumbered 29-1, he said, they can't get away from us now. And when he said that, no more Marines showed up. It didn't get warmer. No food was dropped in, no ammo. What he did is he got up here and he empowered them. That was his barb. That was his hung. That was his encouragement. And sometimes it came down to one word. Fight with me so we can go home. So I have a neighbor 4 doors down. His name's Jerry. But I don't call him Jerry. I call him Sir. And he was there. And I don't know if he'd be my neighbor. I don't know if he would have made it out of there if his leader didn't pick some words to say when times were at their toughest. And as legend has it, Chesty says, fight with me so I can get you home to mom's cooking. Fight with me so I can get you home to your children. And they fought. And we lost over 800 Marines during this battle. But those Marines took out, eliminated 35,000 enemy troops. When moments earlier they're saying, I think this is it. Hey, it was good serving with you. That's the power of dynamic communication. When we communicate dynamically and encourage people and empower them, inspire them, we connect with them emotionally. We cause them to think. We inspire them. We encourage them to take action, which is also initiative. They will do things that a few moments ago they didn't think that they could. Now I'll give you an idea here, a word. Is appreciation important? The Atlanta Journal-Constitution did a study of 19,000, they call them employees, we call them team members, and they said, why do you stay at your job? Is retention important here? Retaining good people? They asked the question, why do you stay at your job? Out of the 19,000 people, 71% said, I feel appreciated. The other 29% had it as answer number 2 or 3. In other words, 100% of the people, their top 3 answers was, I feel appreciated. I feel appreciated. I feel appreciated. The cost of appreciation is 0. We all have unlimited budgets. On that, we can tell people we appreciate them all the time. Let me just say this. The result, the return on appreciation is priceless. Here, I'll just say something for starters. Where's Tiffany? I appreciate you. She has absolutely taken such good care of me since the moment I walked in. Everything I need. Just absolutely awesome. Natalie, where are you? I appreciate you. I love and I appreciate how focused you are in all the times that we talked leading up to this to make this go down seamlessly. And I know there's a lot more people involved, but did they do a great job in the last 5 days here? It was just amazing. I appreciate you. I speak at a lot of events. Top notch, I appreciate you. Lynn, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. I appreciate you too. Appreciation. Now I'll just give you 3 words you can use to help inspire people. BEC. In your day-to-day interaction with people, make the decision to empower people. Let them know you believe in them. Encourage them. Encourage them to keep going, to not give up. And challenge them. Challenge them to be greater than they were the day before. Believe, encourage them. Anytime somebody empowered me, at some point these words were mentioned. At some point. Now, here's what we need to do to decide, make a decision right now. And yes, we have to go to our next class. And yes, we have to fill out our survey. And yes, we have to think about steak and beer. How many of you are still excited about that? I'm going to give you an idea right now. I said on Tuesday that science says we make 35,000 decisions per day. That's what it says. Make the decision to unify. Every single day, unify the team a little bit tighter, a little bit better. Now, as I wrap up, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, the energy that you brought, the enthusiasm. 4 days of this event. In the military, they call it, we just had a 96 hours. How many are excited about unifying people? How many are excited about 2024 right now? As we bring it all together, what was your biggest epiphany from the last 2 hours we spent? Just maybe a few of them, but what stood out to you the most? I saw a lot of you taking notes. How old the boomers are. He's coming at you right now. But still tough. All right, that's maybe one of the epiphanies I didn't see coming. Anything else? How much they know. Right? They have a lot of experience. All right, one last one. What was the big takeaway for you?
Unify.
Say again?
Unify.
Unify. What if we showed up every day unified? Hey, I want to tell you, enjoy the rest of the event. You got 2 hours left before you hit it. It's party time. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and have a great weekend.